I just want to welcome you to this short little introduction. This is information that you need to know before you show up to do your very first lab session. Now, normally students would not need this information. They would find this out in their first session, but we're doing things a little bit differently this year, so you will need this information before you come. So here's what's different. Students will be performing both experiment number 1 and number 2 in their very first lab session. They normally don't do number 2. This year we are. So this handout, which you should have seen the digital version of already, gives you lots of information that you need for the start of the Chem 101 labs. Now, if you don't have it yet, just go to the website shown up here, capuchem.ca, labs 101, and you will see this icon that looks like a PDF. Just click on it and it'll give you the handout. So back to the handout. On the first page, you can see a list of items that you need to obtain before you come to the lab. So that would be the Chem 101 lab manual, which is this yellow book. Then there's a sort of generic lab guide that you need for all first year chemistry lab courses. We're still using the 8th edition, so any copy that you can find from probably the last 10 years is suitable. But you do need the current version of the Chem 101 manual. You also need some safety glasses of some sort for your very first lab session. So if you flip and take a look at the back side of this handout, you'll see that there's some information at the top dealing with safety glasses. There's 3 different types as mentioned here. And also in a few minutes, when you look at the safety video, there's also more information in the safety video on obtaining your safety glasses. Now, you can buy them at either the Capilano bookstore or maybe at a hardware store like Home Depot, but they're not going to have as many options there. So you probably want to get them at the Capilano bookstore. Okay, so aside from your 2 manuals and your safety glasses that you need to bring to your first lab session, there's also some other items. You're going to do some calculations, so you need a calculator. You always need a pen to record your raw data with. And this year with COVID, face coverings are mandatory in the lab. Yes, they're mandatory. So cloth masks are fine. If you have higher tech ones, you can bring that as well. And if you forget your mask the first week, we do have disposable ones that we can let you have for the first session. All right, so at the bottom of the handout, you can see what we're going to be doing in the first lab session is experiments number 1 and 2. You can see here various pages that you're requested to read. More specifically, though, this is what we're going to be doing in that first session. Experiment number 1 is just an orientation. Now, I would like you to please take a look at all the topics listed on pages 1 to 14. Read them through. There's more information. Sig figs are covered on pages 15 to 20, but you don't have to look at that now. It's going to be introduced to you later on as one of the online lectures. So you can skip that if you want to. Just look at pages 1 through 14. Then we're going to move immediately on to experiment number 2. So please make sure you've read through all of pages 23 to 31, the entire experiment. And I'm just going to briefly show you how to prepare for a chemistry lab in general, and we'll use experiment number 2 as our example. So typically take a look at your lab schedule first of all, and you will receive this at the first lab session. See what experiment you're preparing for. Then start reading about it in the lab manual. So using experiment 2 as an example, you'll see on page 23 that at the top there's an overview of the experiment, so what to expect. Then at the lower half of the page, it gives you information on the preparation that you need to do before you come to the lab. So here you can see some topics listed in the lab guide, so you'd want to read those through. But more important are the videos that are mentioned at the bottom. So you can see a web address here, and you can see that for this particular experiment, there are 3 videos to watch. You can see the approximate runtime over here. All of these videos are prepared in our chemistry labs, and they're hosted on YouTube. So if you haven't been to our lab website yet, this is what it looks like. You can see all the different courses listed across the top. We want Chem 101, so just click on that and it'll take you to your schedule page for Chem 101. Whole bunch of information here. If you just scroll down, it doesn't matter whether in your group A or group B. Either case, you'll see this icon over here. Whenever you see this icon, that means there's a technique video available for that particular experiment. So you just go ahead and click on it, and then it's going to take you to another page. You can scroll up and down through that page to see all the various videos that you need to watch for that particular experiment. Now, the narration is rather slow on those videos, so if you want to speed things up a bit, you can always click on the settings wheel in YouTube, and you can just increase the playback speed all the way to 2 times if you want to, just to get through things a little bit more rapidly. Okay, once you've looked at all of that, then it's a good idea to read through the introduction in the lab manual. So for example, pages 24 through 29 for this experiment. Things to skim through. When you get to this page here, you can see all of these try-its. These are fill in the blanks. It would be a great idea if you've filled this out in pencil directly in your lab manual before you come, and then your instructor will review this and you'll also find out what the answers are to these particular questions. So take a look at that. Finish your intro. Then you're going to move on to reading the procedure. The first page of procedure deals with mass. Second page deals with volume measurements. This is what you'll need to be executing when you're in the lab for your first session. And then after that, on page 32, you can just see a general study guide. And there will be a pre-lab quiz before we start experiment number 2. So it's typically based on these same types of questions here. It's based on your introduction reading and your procedure. Now you don't have to memorize anything, but please make sure you do understand what's going on. And typically with a quiz, you would need a calculator. Typically it takes place during the first 10 minutes of a lab session. And unfortunately, if you're late to the lab, then you're just going to have to accept a score of 0. There's no time at the end of the lab to write the quiz. So please try and make sure you always show up on time for the lab. There's a little bit of paperwork that you need to fill out before you even come. So pages 9 and 10 of your lab manual, that's the blue pages. They have a contract and a questionnaire. So fill that out to the best of your ability and then just hand it in when you show up in the lab. This is what those pages look like. Last name, first name, and please write here what you want to be called. Your instructor will memorize your name as quickly as possible, but we only want to have to memorize one name. So whatever you write down in that box there, make sure that's the name that you write on everything that you hand into us. Fill out which section number you're in. You don't know your personal locker number yet, so don't worry about that. Then we just have some check-off boxes here. If you're going to be wearing contacts, please let us know by checking off yes and telling us what type, typically soft. And please keep in mind that you will need safety goggles instead of safety glasses. So purchase the correct type based on what you're going to be wearing. If you have any medical conditions that we should know about confidentially, just fill it out over here. And once you've read through and watched the video, just check off yes, date it, and sign it, please. On the back side, you don't really need to fill this out, but just please be aware that you do have a Capilano email address, and that's the chief means that we use to contact with you. So make sure you're checking out that email address at least once a week. Okay, now please be aware that regardless of which lab section you're registered into, we are going to be splitting every lab section in half into a group A and a group B. In this manner, we can keep our labs at below half occupancy so that we can run labs and keep 2 meters apart from each other. So there are 2 different schedules. So it's only going to be group A students that attend during the week of September 14th to do experiment 1 and 2. Group B students, you have nothing to do. You'd come back in the week of September 21st to do the exact same stuff that the group A students did. Now, unfortunately, we can't divide students into groups A and B until only a few days before the labs begin. We have to wait until the registration lists have stabilized, and then we are simply going to cut each lab section in half. So the first 8 people alphabetically, you're going to be group A. The last 8 people, you're going to be group B. So just please wait until a few days before labs begin, and we'll mass email everybody to let you know which group you're going to be in for the semester. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact your lab instructor. There's a few of us, so if you don't yet know who your lab instructor is, just go to the MyCap schedule, take a look at the section you're registered in, and look over here. For example, Chem 101 L3, Matt LePage, that's me, so I'd be your instructor. You might have somebody else. And then to find out what our email address is, you could just go to the Capilano homepage, click on search, type in your instructor's name, and you'll get all the contact information there. Okay, so that's pretty much it, and we'll be seeing half of you pretty soon, and the rest of you a week later.